Good morning, everyone. Excited to be standing in this training room all by myself. And thankfully, I have you guys on Zoom, or I would be talking to nobody. So glad you guys are here on Zoom, which also means from you guys on Zoom that I'm going to need your participation, because I know usually when I'm doing this, I have a bunch of people in the classroom, and I probably spend more focus talking to them. So usually just they let you guys out by answering all the questions and stuff. But as of right now, and hopefully it'll change, but I'm the only one here in the room. So need some participation from you guys as we go through this, if you have questions and stuff. All right, so today what we're going to be talking about is we're going to talk today about working your sphere of influence. And I'm going to give you 4 what I call protocols for working your sphere of influence. The reason I call them a protocol is because I want you to think about it as not being a rule or anything like that. I want you to think of it as a protocol. A protocol is a required condition. So I'm going to give you 4 protocols that if you will implement these 4 protocols, it will increase the amount of business that you're doing with your sphere of influence because of you implementing these 4 protocols. Now, before we get into that though, there's a couple of things that I want to put in some groundwork first to make sure that you guys understand, so that these 4 protocols will make the most sense to you. The first thing that I want to talk about is the way that most people approach working their sphere of influence is they typically approach it from the standpoint of being a people problem, meaning they're looking at it from the standpoint of the people. And I'm going to invite you today to change that just a little bit. And what I mean by that is I want you to approach it as being a math problem. Working your sphere of influence is more of a math problem than it is a people problem. And I'll show you what that means and what that looks like. But if you understand the principle in math that I'm going to teach you, so we're going to talk about 2 different types of systems today. One is an open system and one is a closed system. And if you understand how closed systems work in terms of math, and you apply that to working it to your sphere of influence, what you're going to see is how that will enable you to make more money from your sphere of influence by approaching it as a math problem, not so much a people problem. And I'll show you what that looks like. So that was the first thing. Second thing that we have to put into place on this is I want to go through and talk to you first. We're going to talk about quickly 2 other areas before we jump into your sphere of influence. Okay. And I don't know how well you can see that. Hopefully you can see, but if not, just I'll make sure to emphasize. And if you can't read something that I've written down there, or you have a question, feel free to unmute and ask any questions that you have. Okay. So the first place that I want to go to and talk about is a client. What makes someone a client? Now, so here, what we're going to do now is we're going to quickly talk about these 3 areas. Well, excuse me, 2 out of the 3 areas. The third area is your sphere of influence that we're going to spend a bunch of time talking about. So the first thing though is we're going to talk about what makes someone a client. And so for this, I'm going to ask you guys to unmute and answer some of the questions on this. But let me give you some background first on this. So I want to talk about what makes somebody a client. We're going to talk about 4 things that make someone a client before we get into the sphere of influence. And like I said, we'll go through this pretty quickly, but think of these 4 things that make somebody a client. This is not the definition from the division of real estate. If we went down to the division of real estate and you said, what makes somebody a client? They're not going to tell you these 4 things. I'm looking at it from the standpoint of how do you know you're going to get paid? That's what's more important to me. I mean, I don't want to say the client's not important from the division standpoint. That's going to be included in this, but there's more to it in terms of us getting paid. Okay. So let me ask you guys, and there's 4 things that we'll talk about quickly here. The first one is pretty simple. Second gets a little less simple, third less, and even fourth even less. In fact, I will probably have to give you the 4th one. So what makes someone a client? Somebody unmute and share with them.
How about somebody agreeing and signing the paper to have you represent them?
Okay, Kurt, perfect. Like I said, first one's usually the easiest one. So thank you. So I'm going to write it down up here as you. So just in case you guys can't see what I've written on the board, number one, I've written down you. Now, if you're taking any notes, here's what I would recommend for you to write it down this way. They are committed to working exclusively with you. So what makes somebody a client is they are committed to working exclusively with you. Now, the way that they demonstrate that they're committed to working exclusively with you is through signing a contract. Whether it's a listing agreement or a buyer broker, they sign that, which is how they demonstrate that they're committed to working exclusively with you. But just keep in mind, you could have somebody who is committed to working exclusively with you, but they've not signed an agreement. That's possible. You could also have had somebody sign an agreement that is not committed to working exclusively with you. Okay. So the first thing is they have to be committed to working exclusively with you. Okay. What else would they have to have, be, or do in order to be a client?
I think, Russ, they would need to respond to your phone calls, to, you know, the efforts that you're putting in. They need to communicate.
Okay. Okay, good. I like that. So as far as that, I'm going to lump that in with this committed to working exclusively with you, even though that might not be solely that. I think it bleeds over into number two. So you're on the right track with that. Here's how I'm going to write it down. Number two is I'm going to write it down as I'm going to write it down as the word need. N-E-E-D. Need. Now, here's what, if you're taking notes, here's what I would ask you to write down. They have clear and present needs that can be met. Clear and present needs that can be met. So if somebody is going to be a client, they have to be committed to working exclusively with you. And then second is they have to have clear and present needs that can be met. Clear and present needs that can be met. So just as an FYI, that this inside of clear and present needs that can be met means they are qualified. It means they know what they want. It means that what they want exists, that they're not at la land thinking of what they're going to get. So clear and present needs that can be met. Good. What else would have to happen for you to get paid? And like I said, this is where it starts to get a little harder. All right, I'll help you out. I'm going to write it down as now. N-O-W, now. They're committed to buying or selling now. Now, my definition of now is not tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. It's not today necessarily. It is tied back to number two. Remember, number two is they have clear and present needs that can be met. Well, once we find that property, if it's a buyer or if it's a seller, an offer comes in that meets their needs, they will act. So somebody who says, well, yeah, we want to buy, but we just want to wait until August. In my mind, that is not a now client. That's not a now seller. It's not a now buyer. Now means when the right property shows up, if it's a buyer, or if I put my home on the market and I'm ready to put it on the market and I get an offer, I'm not going to go, well, let's wait and see if we can get a better offer. That's what now is. All right. And then number 4 on this is they have to be, since I'm not, unless somebody wants to take a guess, but I don't think I've ever had anybody who has not been through the class get this. Tell me what it is. So the last one is what we call tethered. They have to be tethered to you. Now, usually if I ask somebody, how would you tether a client to you? Tether means tied to. Usually people will say through the agency agreement. Well, that was up here. Number 1 was clear and present needs that can be met. So we don't tether our client to us through a contract. We tether the clients to us through, just right under here, my abbreviation for appointment, APPT is what I always put. So we tether our clients to us through an appointment. You should never leave an appointment with a client without scheduling the next appointment. You will never, I shouldn't say never, very unlikely that you will lose a client if you constantly have an appointment scheduled with them. If every time you leave a client meeting, you schedule the next meeting, it is very unlikely they will go behind your back with another agent. So I would just recommend anytime you meet with a client, before leaving that appointment, schedule the next appointment. So if it's a listing, schedule an appointment for 3 to 4 weeks out, saying, hey, in the event we have not gotten an offer, I want to sit down with you again and go through and talk about why we have not received an offer on your property. If it's a buyer, before you leave the appointment, schedule the next appointment. Okay, that's clients. Next, let's talk about is prospects. So a prospect is someone who is deficient in one or more of these other areas. Okay, so a client is deficient in one or more of these. They either aren't committed to working exclusively with you, they don't have clear and present needs, they're not committed now, or you just don't have an appointment with them. So a prospect is missing one or more of these 4 things. Think of it this way too. Another way of thinking about a prospect is you're prospecting. When you are prospecting, when you're doing your prospecting, you are trying to find people that will be committed to either buying or selling with you, that have clear and present needs that can be met, that are ready to buy or sell now, and that you can set an appointment with them. That's what prospecting is. So a prospect is somebody who's missing one or more of these. So let's say that I have somebody who is committed to working exclusively with me. They have clear and present needs that can be met, and they're ready to go now, but I don't have an appointment with them. What should I do? That means they're now in the prospect category. They're not in the client category. They're a prospect. How should I approach it with them in order to make sure I don't lose them as a client? How should I manage them?
If you can set up an appointment.
Perfect. So what would I do in order to make that happen?
Call or contact, I guess, and
Perfect. So here's how we manage prospects. So we manage our clients. We're going to manage clients through the tethering them or having an appointment. So if I don't have that, I need to have contact. This marker's kind of dying on me. I need to have contact with that person. So this is saying what I'm writing up here is contact at least one time per week. So once a week minimum until they become a client. Okay. So that's prospects. A prospect is missing one or more of these. I should have contact with them once a week until they become a client, or so their prospects are becoming clients, or they're becoming what we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about over here, which is SOI. Okay. So think of it this way. Here's another way I like to think of it is I've got my clients, I've got leads that when I'm prospecting, I'm not always going to set an appointment. You're occasionally going to get somebody that's a lead that you're going to follow up on. You should follow up on them once a week as a lead until they become a client, or you end up putting them over to work with them in this sphere of influence category that we're going to talk about now. So now for the rest of the time we're going to be meeting, what we're going to be talking about is this sphere of influence and the 4 protocols that if you will follow, you will close more business with your sphere of influence. Okay. Now, in order for me to do that though, I first have a video that I'm going to show you guys. That's a Ma and Pa Kettle video. Now, the reason I'm showing you this video is I mentioned to you already at the start of this class that the management of working this system that I'm going to give to you is a math problem. It's not a people problem. And that as part of that math problem is understanding that you're going to work in this closed system. Now, so we're going to do a little bit of math, little bit. So not a lot. But before we do that, I have this video I need to show you guys. And it's a Ma and Pa Kettle video, which is something that was on TV back in probably the 50s, I guess. I don't know, maybe 60s. But show you this video clip, then we're going to talk about it for just a second, okay? So let me get this pulled up here. so you guys can see it. So give me 1 minute. All right, I'm getting close here. There we go. There it is. Share soon. Video. Okay, here we go. All right, sorry, I know it's not playing yet. Give me 1 second. All right, here we go.
I figure 75% to you, Panma, and 25% divided between the 5 of us. Yida, Crowbar, myself, Tom, and the baby. That makes 5% for each one of us.
Billy, you're cheating yourself. If there's 25% divided among the 5 of you, that's 14% apiece.
Oh, no, listen, Pa. I wouldn't cheat you. You know I wouldn't. Now, look here. I'll show you. Let me rub this out here. And now, 25 divided by 5 is 5. You see, 5 won't go into 2, will it? No. But 5 goes into 25 5 times, you see?
No, you're wrong, Billy. Now, I'm pretty good mathematician. Now, 5 into 25, 5 won't go into 2, will it?
No.
But 5 goes into 5 once. Now, we didn't use the 2 before, so we bring it down here. Now, 5 into 20 goes 4 times. There you are. 5 into 25, 14.
No, look, Pa. Let me prove it to you now by multiplication. 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25.
Well, I'm surprised you're learning.
Huh?
I'm surprised that you're learning. Now I'll show you. 5 times 14 is 25. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5. 25. That's it.
No, look, Ma. Look, you're wrong there because I'll prove it to you. We'll put down 5 14s here. 14, 14, 14. There. Now I'll prove to you by addition that 5 14s is not 25. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25. There you are. Better brush up, Billy. I don't want to see you boys cheated.
All right. It's a little bit more difficult for me to do that video without you guys in the room because I don't know if you laughed or not at that. So anyway, here's the point of why I show that to you is at one point as we go through and I show you this math that we're going to do here, what you're going to see is, or what you're going to feel like is that I am doing Ma and Pa Kettle math, but I'm not. Okay. So just know we're not going to spend a ton of time doing math on what we're going to do, but you do have to have this basic understanding. And the moment you understand what I'm going to show you on the math part of this, it'll change the way you approach working your sphere of influence because of that. So, all right, so here we go. So here's the idea of what we're going to do. So let me show you first what this process is going to look like, because here's the frustration that I have. And I'm noticing I've got a couple of people that I can see online that are repeating the class, which I'm always so excited when you will come back to this, because what I'm about to show you, you are going to be excited about, and you're going to say, I can see how it will work. But the problem is people leave the class and then they go and don't end up doing what we talked about today, even though you will know. Part of what I feel like my job is to enable you to know with a capital K, so that you know this will work. You'll see it. You'll say, I can understand it. But unfortunately, people leave and don't always go and do it. And now I want to show you why that is real quick. So let me just draw up here what this looks like. So this process that we're going to go through and talk about is going to look something like this. Hopefully you can see this, what I've just drawn up here. So what I've just drawn up here is half of the learning curve, or half of a bell curve, okay? But what the process of you getting this up and running with your sphere of influence is going to look like is this green line that I've drawn right here. Is this process, if you will follow it, will take you to right here, where this is what I would say where it has matured, the process that I'm showing you, where this will have matured. And what I mean by matured is from this point on right here, once it matures, you can count on a 6-digit income just from your sphere of influence over. And really probably based on where our prices are at today, I should say, if you're not making $250,000 a year from your sphere of influence, you need to start doing this piece of it, and then it will start to happen, okay? And if you are, then you can actually just improve it to do even more. But now I want to show you what this looks like though. In order for you, this process that I'm going to show you today to work is going to take somewhere between 6 to 9 months for you to get to this point. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is, again, just I want to remind you, when I teach this class, usually people will come to it, they'll be really excited, they're going to leave knowing, hey, yeah, I could see how that will work. I'm going to go do it. But what ends up happening is they end up not going and doing it. And the reason why I believe, part of why they don't end up going and doing it is, again, if you look at this green line, you will notice that 6 to 9 months out is where I'm saying you can count on that it's going to be generating business for you in the likes of $250,000 a year or more. Well, notice though what happens back here, and at this point right here, which is about halfway between that 6 to 9 months, so somewhere between 3 and 4 months, 4.5 maybe. What, and I don't know how well you guys can see on Zoom what I've drawn, but what happens that first 3 to 4 months of working this system? If you can see what I've drawn.
Maybe perfecting your technique or your approach of
Okay, good.
contacting them.
For sure, but what happens, assume this green line, which I used green to represent money. How much money are you going to make from this process during the first 3 to 6 months?
Almost none.
Yeah, so I want you to notice that, which that's not totally true, by the way. I don't want you to leave here thinking, well, I'm going to make no money from it, because that's not totally true. But I just want you to see that the first 3 to 4 months of doing this, you might feel like I'm doing all this work and I'm not seeing the rewards. But I like to liken that to bamboo. Does anybody know anything about how bamboo grows? Anyone on Zoom?
It doesn't grow for like the first year or something like that, and then it shoots up like feet at a time after that.
Good, yeah. And it's actually the first 4 years. So for the first 4 years, it does nothing, or it appears that, I should say, let me say it that way. It appears that nothing's happening. And then after that, in the 5th year, all of a sudden it shoots up to like 90, 100 feet in a matter of weeks. Well, the reason it can do that is because the first 4 years, it was putting its root structure in place to allow it to grow that quickly. Well, that's what I want you to understand from this process that we're talking about, is the first 3 to 4 months, the root system is getting put into place. So it actually is working. It just doesn't feel like it's working. You're not immediately seeing the success, but then you'll notice right after that, all of a sudden it shoots up. And so what you will find in this process, if you'll follow it, is it is going to feel like nothing's happening, but then all of a sudden a switch is going to get flipped and you're going to see a ton of business start to come in. However, the key thing on this, so this is why I want to tie it back to, is I'm going to give you 4 protocols over here. You have to do the 4 protocols. And the reason I'm calling them protocols again is because I'm trying to set the expectation for you of, you got to do these 4 things. If you'll do these 4 things, it will work. Now, so the first protocol. So let me give you now the first protocol. The first protocol, protocol number 1, is that this system, or your sphere of influence, in order to work the way I'm going to teach you here, is it has to be a closed system. a closed, so what I've just written on the board is closed system. So it has to be a closed system. Well, what that basically means is that it has to be fixed in size. So think of it this way. When I say a closed system, what I mean is it has to be fixed in size. Now, let me explain that. So I have been to a number of real estate seminars over my career. And as I've gone, and I see these real estate trainers bring top producing people up onto the stand, one of the things that they will usually say is that, sorry, they'll ask the questions of the people, these top producers that come on these panels, how many people do you have in your sphere of influence? And then these agents will usually say, you know, numbers like 2,000, 3,000. The most I think I heard somebody say one time was, I have 4,000 people in my sphere of influence. Well, when I heard that, I immediately start to do the math, because I hear the same trainers say things like this. You should be able to get to a 10 to 15% return off of the people in your sphere of influence. Well, if that's true, if I should be able to get a 10 to 15% return, let's just stick with 10%. If I should get a 10% return off of 4,000 people in a database. So if I got 4,000 people, how many transactions, if I got a 10% return, should I be doing every year if I'm going to get a 10% return off 4,000?
400.
400. And I don't believe any of those agents have gotten or do 400 transactions a year that have the 4,000 people in the database. So I always have to stop and go, okay, is that the most effective thing that you could do? Because here's why I say that. What I'm going to show you today, that your return off this closed system is a 60% return. You should be able to do 60% from your sphere of influence. You should be able to count on getting referrals from or doing business with 60% of the people in this database. And I'll show you how that works. But in order for that to work, the first thing that has to happen is your database or sphere of influence has to be closed in a closed system or fixed in size. So now let me explain the closed system. Now, typically what I would do is this. Typically what I'm going to do in this class, but I'm just going to explain it today because looking at the camera, you won't be able to see it anyway. But I have in my hand this 6-sided dice. Now, if I were to pick a number, and we're not going to actually, typically I would do this. If you guys were in the room with me, I would actually do this, but I'm not going to because you won't be able to see it anyway. But if I picked a number, well, let's just, usually I would have you guys pick a number, but since you're not here, I'll just pick it for you. Let's say the number 3. What are the odds that I'm going to roll a 3 with this dice? So if I was to roll this dice right now, what are the odds that a 3 was what the number that would come up?
One in 6.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So one out of 6. But in reality, if I were to roll this 6 times, what's going to happen? Is it going to come up one time out of the 6 rolls that I do it in? Meaning, let me say it this way. Is every one of these numbers on here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, going to show up one time if I roll this 6 times?
No.
It wouldn't. You'd have to keep rolling until you got one.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So like if I roll this right now, which I just did and got a 2, does that mean the next 5 times I roll it, I'm not going to get a 2?
No.
No.
The answer is no. Everybody understands that, right? That's an open system. See, the way that Las Vegas works is an open system. In an open system, this dice has 6 sides, so the odds of me rolling a specific number are 1 out of 6. But if I actually did it and I rolled it 6 times, I'm not going to get each number only 1 time. In fact, it is possible that I could roll this and get a 3 all 6 times. That's an open system. Now, why does that matter? Well, that matters because of what I'm going to show you next. So the next thing that I want to talk to you about in terms of an open system is, so remember, we're talking about 2 types of systems here, and I'm helping you guys to understand the difference between an open system and a closed system, because the first protocol of working your sphere of influence is it has to be a closed system, okay? So in an open system looks like this. So if I were to just take a map and I drew a circle on the map, now it'd have to be a pretty large area for what I'm saying to statistically play out. But if I drew a circle on a map and it was a pretty large area, what are the chances that anybody within this circle are going to be buying or selling within the next year? Does anybody have any idea? What are the odds that the population is going to turn over, or what percentage of the population turns over every year? Anybody have any idea?
I don't, but isn't it that people will usually after about 5 years be ready to make a change?
Yep. So if that's the case, what would kind of your guess be then? That'd be about 20%, right?
Okay.
So it's not quite that high, but so here's what I know from the Census Bureau, that when they do the census, what they have found is that every year, 12% of the population will turn over. So it's not quite 1 out of every 5, but it's somewhere in that probably 5 to 7. So 12% of the population is in the process of moving at any given moment. Okay, but now that includes renters, by the way. So if you factor out for the renters, it ends up being 7%. So 7% of the population at any given moment basically is what this would say. And there's going to be some ebbs and flows in this. So it's not a hard, fast number, meaning that, we're going to have times where it goes up a little or down a little. However, it doesn't fluctuate that much. But remember, again, I'm showing you how an open system works. When I was a brand new agent, I went to my manager and was talking to him about how do I get my business going. And he told me to go knock on doors. And one of the things he told me was this, and some of you may or may not have heard this before, but he basically said, for every 100 doors that you knock on, you should come up against 10 leads. So for every 100 doors you knock on, you should end up with essentially 10 leads. Well, from that, he said, of those 10 leads, you should turn 1 of them into a transaction. Now, have any of you heard that before, by the way? If you talk to 100 people, you should get 10 leads. From the 10 leads, it should turn into a transaction. Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, that actually sounds pretty good. Like, it really actually sounds good. If I talk to 100 people, I should get 10 leads and turn it into a transaction. That actually sounds pretty good. And where that came from is this Census Bureau stuff of 12% of the population is in the process of moving. That includes renters. So if you took that number, that's kind of what they did, is just rounded that down to say 10% is in the process. Okay. Now, that sounds really good. And so for me, as a new agent, I wanted to make $100,000 a year. The average commission was $2,000 back then. So I was going to have to do 50 transactions. Well, if I wanted to do 50 transactions, then my manager said that I needed to go and talk to 50 people every day. Well, so in essence, though, let me show you what that looks like. I was talking to 250 people a week, which if these numbers held up, that would mean I should have gotten 25 leads every week, and that should have turned into 2.5 transactions, which would have equated to over 50 transactions in the year. But it never happened for me. Now, the reason where this comes from, and it actually probably is somewhat true, meaning that out of 100 people, you should get 10 leads turn into a transaction, but it's no different. So let me make sure you guys are tying this all together. What I'm trying to get you to see, it's no different than this dice. If I rolled this dice and I could roll it, in fact, I have rolled it over 15 times and never had the number 3, let's say, show up. Yet I kept rolling it and the 3 wasn't showing up. Well, that's what an open system looks like. See, and here's what, let me say it a different way. In fact, let me get the dice back again. When we say the odds are 1 out of 6, that actually sounds pretty good. And same as this. If you talk to 100 people, you should get 10 leads. 10 leads should turn into a transaction. Sounds good. But that's not actually what the numbers say. What it really is saying is this. If the odds of me rolling a 3 are 1 out of 6, and I roll it, and I don't get a 3, which, by the way, I just got a 2 again. So if I rolled this and I didn't get the 3, now, so I just rolled it, I got a 2. So now I'm going to roll it again. What are the odds now that I'm going to get a 3?
They're still 1 in 6, aren't they?
That's right. That's right. The odds are still 1 in 6. So I roll it again and I get a 6. Now what are the odds? What are the odds that I'm going to get a 3?
1 in 6.
Yeah, see, that's the problem with an open system. See, that's the problem with this. So let me say this a different way, and it might sound a little negative, but I actually just want you to know the truth on it. See, what we're saying when I roll this, it is a 1 out of 6 chance, but what it also means is the odds are 5 times greater that I'm not going to get a 3, and I just got a 5. The odds are 5 times greater that I'm going to roll something other than a 3. See, that's the challenge with this. 1 out of 6 sounds okay, but in reality, the odds are 5 times greater that I'm going to roll something else besides a 3 when I do it. And I just roll it again and got another 5. So notice that the odds really are 5 to 1 against you. So now with that, let me come back to this. This whole idea of 110-1 here, what that's saying is 1 out of every 10 should turn into something. But it also means the odds are 9 times greater that you're going to be told no when you're knocking on a door or you go out and make phone calls. The odds are 9 times greater that somebody's going to tell you no than that they're going to tell you yes. That's what this actually says. And again, I'm not trying to be negative. What I am not trying to do is get you not to go door knock and prospect. I'm not doing that. I just want you to understand how an open system works. When we prospect in an open system, we can say 110-1. And here's the thing. Let me come back to the dice again. On this dice, if I were to roll this dice 1,000,000 times, if I were to roll it 1,000,000 times, the number of times that the 3 comes up is probably going to be 1 point something or 0.97 or 996 or something. That it's going to be really, really close to 1 out of 6 times. But here's the key. I'm going to have to roll it like 1,000,000 times before it's going to balance out. So that's the same concept of this, is this 110 works, and given a large enough sample size, so given that you're going to go out and make over 1,000,000 contacts, you'll probably end up with it being 110-1. But that's an open system. See, the reason Las Vegas works and in fact, you stop and think about it, and I've said this for years in my trainings, but I think COVID actually kind of proved what I was saying, which is true, is the only way that the owners of the casinos lose is if you don't show up and put money in the machine or on the table. As long as money is going in the machine or on the table, they win because they've structured the system. They understand odds. They understand how it works. And they know, even if you hit a jackpot and you won $2 million, they know all that does is feeds more people to put more money on the table or in the machine, which they're going to capture a certain percentage of that, a small percentage of it each time, to where they understand the odds are in their favor. Well, how would you like to do real estate the way Vegas does gambling? That's what we're talking about. And the way that you're going to do that is through what we call a closed system. So now that I've set you up for this, let me now explain how a closed system works. So let's say again that I'm going to roll the dice, but this time I'm going to change the rules. And the good news is, well, don't go to try this in Vegas. You'll end up dead in the desert somewhere because it's not going to work. But because it's your real estate career and it's your game, think of it that way, you're in charge of the game, you get to control the way the rules work for the game. So the rules of the game, if I were to do this actually now, is I would say I'm going to roll this dice, and every time a number comes up that's not the number 3, I would put one of these blue stickers on it. And then the rules are, after that, if I roll it and a blue sticker comes up, I get a free throw. And so that way I'm rolling this, and every time I roll the dice, the chances that the 3 are going to show up increase. Because if I roll it and a blue dot shows up, it's a free throw. I get it automatically, roll it again for free. Then what happens is the more times I roll the dice, the more times I'm likely to roll the number 3. Oh, let me pause real quick. Will you guys all just throw your name in the chat box so I have a record of who was at the class? So just first and last name so that I have the attendance thing for the class would be awesome. Okay. So, which I'll hopefully remind you that again in case people forget. But on this, that's what a closed system looks like. So when I'm saying the first protocol or the first rule of you working this database, your SOI, is it has to be a closed system. So now, hopefully, what you should be asking, the question I hope is in your mind now is, okay, fine, I understand what a closed system is. In fact, I guess I should ask, does anybody not understand the difference between the open system and a closed system? Any questions on that? I'll take that as a no that you get it, which is great, okay? All right, so now that you understand it's got to be a closed system, the next thing you probably should be asking is, okay, well, how many people then? Now, so here's what I've found is inside of your database, it should be a closed system. And the problem with having 4,000 people in the database is it's going to be too overwhelming. And you're not going to be able to manage it effectively with 4,000 people, and you don't need that many people. So how many should it be? The number that I recommend now, and before I give you the number, let me just make sure that I'm really, really clear. The most important thing is that it's a closed system. It has to stay fixed in size. And so more important than the number I'm going to give you is the fact that you could use just about any number you wanted. It just has to stay fixed at that size. But what I have found is somewhere around 200 to 300 is the max that you're going to be able to effectively work this. Now, keep in mind, and I'll come back to this in a bit, but I'm telling you, you can count on a 60% return out of this system if you'll follow these 4 protocols. And when I say a 60% return, again, this is either a referral from somebody that's going to buy or sell, or they're going to buy or sell over the next year. Okay, so 60% return of getting referrals from them and or them doing something. out of 200 or 300 people. So just at 200 people, 60% return would be 120 referrals from the people out of that database, okay, is what we're talking about. All right. Now, the reason I say that it's got to be 200 or 300, somewhere between 200 and 300, but is because if you are doing more than 300, you'll get overwhelmed and you just won't do it. But if it's at 200, it's manageable. Now, I have seen people still be effective with it with as few as 75 people in their database. But typically, you're going to have to be closer to the 200, okay? So 200 to 300 people. Now, once you do hit the point that it's matured and you're getting the return off of it that we're talking about, you can adjust it to any number you want to. But for the sake of me training you, I'm going to say it's 200, okay? So 200 people is the number you should have, okay? Now, number two, the second protocol. So now that we've got 200 people in the database, how do I work them? What's the management of that look like? What does that need to be like? So the next thing is this. The next protocol number two, is permission. You need to have permission from all 200 people to stay in touch with them about real estate. Now, I'll define this a little bit more even. But so permission looks like this. This is, you need to be saying some language, something like this. And I'll say it a few times if you're wanting to write it down. I work with a select group of people. So that's kind of the key phrase you want to say is I work with a select group of people. Or you could say it as I have a select group of people. I usually say it somewhere, one of those two. I work with a select group of people, or I have a select group of people, or you might want to even say it as I'm putting together a select group of people. So you can say it however you want to say it, but I'm putting together a select group. I have a select group. I work with a select group. You should notice the key there is select group. I have a select group of people that I stay in touch with, okay? So I have a select group of people, and that select group is going to be 200 people. I'm putting together a select group of 200 people. Now, I don't know if I would tell them that there's 200 people, but you want to say, I have a select group of people that I stay in touch with about real estate, and I would like to add you to that list. Now, once you have done that and gotten permission from them and they've said yes, then you can now add them into this database. You can say they are part of the database. So the first thing is it's got to be closed system. Second is you got to get permission. So here's what I would recommend doing. Call through all the people that you have in your cell phone and start asking those people, hey, I'm putting together a select group of people that I would like to stay in touch with about real estate. I'd like to add you to that list. Would that be okay? Now, in the event they say no, that's a win. Don't look at it as a negative. That would be a win. Because right now, at least I know for most agents, I mean, as I look at the list of who's on here, probably not you guys, but with other companies, the other agents that are out there, the majority of agents, what goes on is they assume, we all assume that our friends and our family members know that we're a real estate agent. And we assume that if they have a need, they're just going to call us out of the blue. Well, they're on the other end of the spectrum thinking they might know you're a real estate agent, but they don't know if you want their business. They don't know if you specialize in where they want to buy or sell, or that you are even interested in helping them. And let me give you my real world example of this. This was a number of years ago. But my nephew, my wife's sister, my sister's son, I don't know where wife's sister came from, but my oldest, I'm the youngest of 5. My oldest sister has her second son is probably, I don't know, 14 years younger than me. So like I was probably 14 years old when he was born. So not too horribly different in age, but my nephew, I see on Facebook a number of years ago that he's moved. And so I called him up one day. His name's Ben. I called him up and said, hey, Ben, I noticed that you guys were moving. And oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you the part is he had used an agent with the company that I was with. So I called him up and I said, hey, Ben, I noticed you guys bought a house and you used this particular agent. I just am curious of why did you end up using them and why you didn't call me? And he and I have enough of a relationship that wasn't going to be offensive for me to call and ask him that. So I did. And he responded and said, oh, well, I didn't really know, because he was buying in Utah County. And he said, I didn't know if you wanted to drive down to Utah County to show us houses. I thought it would be too much of a pain for you to come and show us houses. So we found this other agent. And I said, well, do you realize that agent lives in Salt Lake County too? And he's like, oh, I didn't know that. And I was kind of like, well, yeah, just so you know, like, I want your business. I want to help you. So in the future, if you're going to do anything, please let me know. And but the good news, which is probably why I'm thinking of this, is he texted me on Saturday and said, hey, call me when you can. We're thinking we want to sell our house and buy a new one. And yesterday we had a phone call, talked about it, and they're probably building a new house, and I'm going to help them sell their house. So my point again being, though, he would have used me the first time when he bought this house had I let him know, hey, I want your business. So I'm sure you guys don't do that. I know, like, looking at the list of who's on there, I know I'm the only one who doesn't tell friends and family that I need their business. I know you guys do that, but just learn from my mistake if you're, happen to be like that. Okay. So that's where this permission comes from, is you want to call them and just say, I'm putting together a select group of people and I want to stay in touch with you about real estate. And if you hear somebody that's thinking of buying or selling, I want you to think of me. If you have a question about real estate, I want you to think about me. Now, so that's friends and family. Next, in just your day-to-day prospecting, if you're doing just listed, just sold, you're out knocking on doors, you're doing open house, any type of prospecting you're doing, your first objective with those people is, I want to set an appointment. So your primary objective is, I want to set an appointment. But in the event I can't get an appointment, then I want to capture the people and put them into this database. Okay. So I want to get people put into my SOI database. And I'm going to, as I'm out prospecting, I'm going to first try to get an appointment. But if I can't get an appointment, then I'm going to say, I have a select group of people that I stay in touch with about real estate. I would like to add you to that list. Now, keep in mind, coming back here to this protocol number one, is it has to stay fixed in size. So let's just say that we pick 200 as the number to be fixed in size. And I now have 200 people that I'm staying in touch with that have given me permission to stay in touch with them. And I'm out prospecting. Let's just say I'm out knocking on doors. I knock on somebody's door. They open the door. I tell them, hey, I'm Russ. We have a home listed for sale down the street. Just wondering who you know that wants to move into the area. I don't know anybody. Well, great. Have you thought about buying or selling real estate? Well, yeah, we actually have been thinking about selling our house. Oh, really? So tell me more about that. And they say, well, we're just starting to think about it now. Our son is going to graduate from high school in a few months. So once he graduates from high school, we're going to take the summer, we're going to go do stuff. And then probably in like September, we're going to list our house. Is that somebody that probably would be worth staying in touch with?
Yes.
Yeah, clearly, right? So instead of just saying, okay, great, I'll get in touch with you later, I'm going to say, that's awesome. I have a select group of people that I stay in touch with about real estate. I would like to just keep in touch with you about what's going on in the market, keep you updated about the market between now and then. One of the other things I say all the time, guys, I work with my clients at their pace. So I'm not going to try to push you to list before you're ready, but I want to be the resource that's going to be there to answer your questions and help you along the way. So would it be okay if I added you to that list? So there's my permission script for that person. They say, yes, you could add us to the list. Okay. Now, but remember protocol number one. So I already had 200 people in there. So am I going to not add that person to the database? Am I going to say, well, sorry, I would love to add you, but I already have 200 people? What would you do?
you'd want to add them because you're going to have some that are going to say no. And so that number will stay at 200, but it's going to be fluctuating from coming in and going out.
So what does that mean I have to do? If I'm, because now I have 201, but remember protocol number 1, I can't have 201.
So you make calls until you find someone who says no.
Okay, good. You're right on. So that's the whole key of this. Remember, in this fixed in size, what you're doing is every time that you meet somebody that you are going to ask for permission to put them in the database, think of it as you're holding them up against the other 200. You're asking yourself, is this person better than any of the 200 people that I currently have? And if the answer is yes, they are better, I'm going to add them and I'll get rid of somebody else. So hopefully that makes sense. So, but you got to get permission. Okay. All right. Any questions on the permission? We'll go to number 3. All right. I'll take that as a no. No questions. All right. So number 3. Number 3 protocol. So the next thing you have to do with this group, now that I have permission, is I'm going to have contact with them. So I'm going to have personal contact with them 1 time per month. And that can be text, it could be a phone call, it could be seeing them at the grocery store, at church, the gym, some at school, whatever. Like wherever you run into them, you got to have some type of a personal contact once a month about real estate. Now, if it's somebody you see at the gym every single day, don't talk to them about real estate every single day, because otherwise they'll start to hide from you. But just once a month, just say, hey, just wanted to touch base to see if there was anything you needed from me in terms of real estate. Okay. So once a month, personal contact can be a text, could be a phone call, could be an in-person based on seeing them at the grocery store, church, the gym, school, whatever. And 1 time per month, mail or email, either one. So you're going to have contact with them once a month, personal, and then once a month via mail or email or a combination. You could do a combination too. You could do a mailing 1 month and email the other 2 months or whatever. However you want to do it, but 1 or twice a month, once a month, mail or email. Now, here's my recommendation for you is get them set up, put this group of people into Moxie Engage, set them up on the neighborhood news. If you will get them set up and put on neighborhood news, it automatically will once a month send them an email with information about here's the houses that are for sale or sold inside of your neighborhood. So that's my recommendation to you, is set them up on neighborhood news so that once a month they'll get an email from you about what's going on in the market. Then you can do a follow-up text, email, or text or a phone call or a personal contact saying, do you have any questions about that mail or email that got sent out to you? Anything I can help you with in real estate? Or do you know anybody thinking about buying or selling? So that's protocol number 3. Any questions on that one?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Protocol number 4 then.
Actually, I do have a question on that, Russ.
Yeah, go ahead, Sherry.
Just for example, say they're looking to buy soon, but they're not sure like of a specific area. Maybe they're more constrained by price range. If there's a couple of neighborhoods, how do we do that? Or
Yeah.
do we just make it a bigger circle?
Nope.
How
No,
do we-
you can set up more than one alert on that neighborhood news. So if they had a couple of different areas or even 3 or 4 or whatever, you could say, I'm going to get you set up and I will have, and you could have them all go the same day if you wanted, or you could have it set up to where once a week, maybe you had one go on 1 week, then next area the next week. I mean, however they want to do it, you could set up multiple of those, or you could do a bigger area too. But I would say probably in that scenario, I probably would set them up on multiple neighborhood news.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yep. All right, so now protocol number 4. So as we do this, so let me ask you a question here. So protocol number 3 is you have to have contact with them once a month. So once a month, you're going to be calling them up on the phone and or talking to them in person and saying, hey, is there anything I can do for you? Now, what are we looking for when we call them? And this piece of it, protocol number 4, is counterintuitive. So it's the opposite of what you would think. So before you tell me the opposite of what you would think, what would you think the purpose of us making a phone call to them would be?
To bring them something of value, to
Okay.
provide valuable information.
Okay, good. Like the idea. So typically, what we would think that we're making a phone call for is to find out who is going to work with us, who are they going to give us as a referral, can I set an appointment with the person? Typically, we think that's what we're trying to do. But the purpose of our phone call is actually going to be what, well, let me back up before I tell you this, because the way I usually write this down, I just realized I didn't define. So how I like to, I've got 2 markers here in my hand, a red and a green, okay? And the way that I like to define it or think about the people that are red and green in this scenario is a green is somebody who's going to do business with you or refer business to you. And a red is going to be somebody who's not going to do business with you or not refer anybody to you as well. So for me, most of the time people think we're calling, trying to find the green is the purpose of this once a month phone call. But what I'm telling you, and this is counterintuitive, is the purpose of us calling is not to find the green. The purpose of calling is to figure out who's red. And what I mean by that is this. Of the 200 people that you have that when you ask them for permission to stay in touch with them about real estate, and they've said yes, there are going to be a number of those people who told you yes, only to get you off the phone, only because they didn't want to hurt your feelings, to tell you that their sister was an agent or their best friend from high school was a real estate agent. They were going to use them anyway, but they don't really want to tell you that because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So they say yes, but then as you stay in touch with them, they will never give you a referral. In fact, I would be willing to guess, looking at the list on here of people. So Mike, are you at a place you could interact with me, that you could unmute and talk for a second, or no?
Yeah. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes. So I know you call your SOI every month, right?
Correct.
Do you have anybody that you call every month that has never given you a referral?
Yes.
Okay. So here's my point of where I'm getting at is the reason I asked Mike is because I know he is on it and calling, but he's got people that he has called for probably years that have never given him a referral. Well, what I'm saying is it's very likely some of those people that we call that we're asking, hey, is there anything I can do for you? Nope. That in reality, they're never going to, for whatever reason. It could be that they have somebody else. It could be that they're just never, ever going to sell too. Who knows? But just know that some of the people that are in your database are actually red, meaning they're never going to refer to you. They're never going to do business with you. That's not a bad thing. It's just the purpose of my phone call then, when I'm calling these people once a month, is to look for the red. So I'm looking for red. I'm trying to find who are the people who are never going to give a referral to me. And so what that looks like is a little bit different than if I'm calling looking for green. If I'm calling trying to find the green, then I don't want them to tell me, no, don't ever call me again. But if I'm calling looking for the red, I'm actually going to give them permission to be red. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let's say that I'm calling through my database and I get to one of those people who has never, ever given me a referral. They've never used me for real estate. They've never given me a referral. I'm just going to, when I get to them, I'm going to just go back to permission and just say, hey, I just wanted to find out, just, hey, quick question for you. If you had a real estate need, do you have somebody you would use? And I guess really what I'm asking is it going to be me? And I'm going to try to give them permission to tell me, you know, Russ, we just are probably never going to sell. Like, we just are going to stay here forever. Now, that doesn't mean they will stay there forever, but it may be that they just say, or that they just say, well, like, let me give you an example. I had a guy in my database that I was staying in touch with like this. And when I went through and called him, and his name's Jay, I called up Jay, and Jay said to me, you know, Russ, actually, I just don't feel like I want to do a real estate transaction with a friend of mine. And so because of that, I just wouldn't feel comfortable having you know all my finances because of our friendship. And I said, okay, Jay, I'm totally good with that. Now, remember, I'm looking for the red when I make this phone call. So I'm trying to find out the people. Now, in fact, let me come back to the dice for a second. Remember I said on the dice in a closed system, we put a blue dot. If I put a blue dot on here and I roll it, I get a free throw. That's what I'm trying to do with these looking for the red. I'm trying to figure out who are the people that I can get rid of. And I don't say that in a bad way, but who are the people that I can eliminate from my database that are probably not going to do business with me or refer someone to me? Who is it that I could get rid of? Well, so Jay says to me, yeah, I just don't feel like I would want you knowing all of my finances and stuff. And so I just wouldn't feel comfortable with it. And I said, okay, that's fine, Jay. I'm totally good with that. Let me ask you this, though. Would you be willing to let me refer you to somebody and have somebody else, like that way, at least I know you're taken care of with a good agent? And he said, yes. And then I followed it up with, well, if you heard of somebody thinking of buying or selling, would you refer them to me? And he said, yes. And then over the years, he has done that. Now, here's the funny thing. When I teach this class, I ran into Jay recently. I mean, he and I see each other every few weeks, but I ran into him not too long ago, and he said, hey, Russ, I'm actually thinking about retiring in the next year or two. And so I just wanted to give you the heads up that I'm thinking about doing that. And I said, okay, cool. And he asked me a few other questions. And then I said to him, but Jay, let me ask you, a few years ago, well, it's been more than a few now, but a number of years ago, you told me if you ever sold your house, you wouldn't let me do it. And he said to me, I never told you that. I would totally use you as an agent. And I was like, no, I promise, Jay, you told me that. And he's like, nah, well, if I did, I don't know why I said it. Now, here's the thing. I don't know what's changed, but over time, he now apparently is going to use me when he goes to sell his house. But I bring that up from the standpoint of, I just want to make sure that like, I would rather know that, because again, I don't know about you guys, but I've had scenarios where I've driven into my neighborhood and I see a for sale sign in front of somebody's house that I'm like, they were on my mailing list. I've been sending them mailings about real estate for years, and now they've got somebody else's for sale sign. In fact, let me give you another quick story on that. Had a guy that my oldest son and his oldest son played baseball together, and he and I coached their team for 3 years. In the process of that, towards the end of that, all of a sudden I drive by his house one day, there's a for sale sign in front of his house. And I had been calling him about real estate. There's a for sale sign in front of his house. I called him up immediately because this one, again, was still with the company I was with. Called him up immediately. His name was Tracy. And I go, Tracy, I just saw that you got a for sale sign in front of your house. What's going on? And I didn't attack him for not listing with me. I was like, where are you going? Like, you and I are coaching baseball together and now you're leaving? And he's like, yeah, I got this job transfer. I'm moving to Texas. And I just was like, oh, that's crappy. Like, I'm going to have to find somebody else to help me coach baseball now. And then I said, and by the way, like, I noticed that you put your house up for sale with a different agent than me. And I just was curious of what ended up happening there. And he said, oh, well, because it's a job transfer, my company told me I had to go through their agency, which happened to be the same company I was with. And I said, well, I wish I would have known, because if I had known I'm with the same company, they would have let you use me. And he was like, oh, sorry, I didn't know. Now it gets worse than that. But so here's my point, though, is again on this, I had not talked to him and done this whole permission thing, said, let me know. So here's where this gets even worse. The next week goes by and I noticed that same agents for sale sign. I live in a cul-de-sac. 2 doors down from me, that agent's sign goes up in the house 2 doors down from me. Now, I don't know those people very well that were 2 doors down from me, but I knew them enough that I saw them like at the mailbox or something. It was like, hey, I noticed you guys are moving. Where are you going? And they said, oh yeah, we just decided we want to move to a different state. So we're going to go find a job and we're going. And I was like, oh, well, just out of curiosity, how did you pick the agent that you listed with? And they said, oh, the house just down the street a ways, they had an open house. We just stopped in and talked to the agent and said, will you come list our house? So both of those houses, by the way, back then sold for $500,000. So do the math on the commission that I lost. Had I listed his house, they probably would have had me list their house too. Like I was just like, oh, like this is so painful to me of the amount of money that I missed out on because I didn't stay in touch this way. So I got off on a little rabbit trail there, but here's the point. Make the phone calls with the idea of give people permission. So if you've got people that you've talked to for years that have never given you a referral, just call them up and ask them in a nice way. Just say, hey, I've been staying in touch with you for a while. I just want to find out, like, are you comfortable if you did have a real estate need that I would be somebody you would feel comfortable talking to? And if they say, yeah, I've no problem with that. Okay, great. And also, if you heard of somebody thinking about buying or selling, would you be willing to pass my name on to them? Like, just ask for permission to find out so that if they say no, you know what? Yeah, we appreciate you calling us, but we're not the referring type. Like I made a referral once to somebody and it worked out horrible and they were mad at me and I just decided I'm never going to get involved. Like if they tell you that, at least you can kind of make the decision. Do I want to still keep calling them or should I move on to somebody else? So protocol number 4 is call looking for the red. You're calling, and if you notice that somebody seems hesitant when you're on the phone with them, give them permission to get out of the database. Just confront them on it from the standpoint of, hey, are you still okay with me staying in touch with you about real estate? Because if you ever feel like I'm bugging you, if you ever are just not interested, please tell me. See, the secret to getting to where you can get a 60% return off your database is get rid of the people who are not going to use you or not going to refer to you, and anybody you replace them with will be better. So think of it this way. What I'm asking you to do through these four protocols is just continue to raise the bar, like the threshold of what it takes to get into your database. Continually raise it and raise it and raise it to where it gets harder and harder for you to replace somebody in that database because you've got so many good people. So now let me give you a real quick, since I've given you a whole bunch of negative ones, let me give you a positive one. So my best friend growing up got married. Lady he married was a hairdresser, stylist. I don't know what the correct term is anymore, but she cuts hair. And they ended up buying a brand new townhouse. And after they moved into that is when I then started to work this system. I started working this way. And I called up and I talked to my best friend, and then his wife would cut my hair. So I talked to her as well and just said, hey, you know, you guys are in this townhouse complex. And one of the things that I know about townhouses is that people tend to buy those more as a starter home, and they're going to be there for a few years, build some equity, finish school, get a better job, whatever, and then they're probably going to move on. So as you guys, and specifically her, is she was cutting hair for a lot of the people in these townhouses. I just asked her, as you're cutting their hair, I'm sure they're going to start talking to you about, hey, my husband got a job, or he just finished school and we're probably going to be moving and blah, blah, blah. I asked her, just when that happens, would you be willing to refer me to those people to help them out in terms of real estate? And she said, absolutely. And I just then added her to the database. I stayed in touch with her, followed exactly this process. And I went and got my hair cut about every 5 weeks. So I was every 5 weeks in front of her and just talking to her about, hey, thanks for referring this person or that person. Like, it was a sad, sad day when my friend got a job transfer with his company and had to move to Idaho. And so I did help them sell their townhouse and they left. But also my number of transactions in that complex started to decrease at that point because I didn't have that connection. So, but here's the point. What you want to create is a group of 200 people who are like her, Terry, which was my best friend's wife, Terry. She was amazing. Like, I probably did a transaction and a half, or probably just say a transaction every other month just from her. So I was doing 6 transactions a year just from her referring people to me. Like, imagine if you had a group of 200 people like that. And granted, you're probably not going to get 200 that are that way. But imagine if you had 200 people who would at least give you one transaction every 4 years even. Like, stop and think about that. For most of you that are on here, if you had 200 people that would give you somebody that or they would buy or sell or refer somebody to you once every 4 years, that's 50 transactions a year. Well, you can do more than that. Like I said, I had Terry that I probably did 6 to 8 transactions a year just from her referring those people to me. So you got to just stop and ask yourself, as you're calling through the people, am I getting a return off of this person? And if you are, great, keep calling them. If you're not, then go back and just confront them in a good way of, hey, are you okay to stay in touch with me? And if you do hear of somebody, would you be willing to refer to me? And if they say yes, great, keep staying in touch. But somewhere along the way, you're going to come across some of those people who tell you yes, yes, yes. But after maybe a year or 2 years, whatever, remember, every time I'm prospecting, I'm looking to add people to the database. And every time I do that, I'm holding them up against the 200 people that are in there. And if you feel like this person is going to be better than that, so let's go back again to, somebody that you've stayed in touch with for years and they've never referred anybody to you. Yet I come across that person door knocking who says, yeah, we're probably going to sell in the next year. I'm going to probably replace that person who's never done anything with these people and stay in touch with them. Use that same time to stay in touch with them over the one who's never referred anybody to me. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. Any questions?
I don't have a question, Russ, but I do have a comment. It sounds like it would be good to make connections with people that talk to a lot of people. Like you said, the hairdresser, maybe apartment managers or something,
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions that way?
Yeah. So yes, I would say if you can make some connections with a divorce attorney, bankruptcy attorneys, anybody that's doing hair, like, just take a look at your database and look at the people who are going to be having, a CPA, anybody like that is going to be having interactions with people that, yeah, for sure. Those are awesome people to have that way. So yeah, excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Good. All right. Well, if you didn't throw your name in the chat box, please do that so that I can have a record of it. But thank you for being here. Hopefully you got some value out of it. If not, if not, I guess then whatever. But if you did, here's the key thing I would say is I'll send out an email the next time I teach this class, which will probably be in about 3 months, 2.5 to 3 months from now. I would just say, come back to that class just to see, did I forget something? Did I miss something? But if you will do this as you're working your database, you should see a greater return off of the number of referrals and transactions coming to you from that group of people. So anyway, thanks for being here. Have a
Thank
great.
Thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome.